Now, well, let's go a bit local here. You know, you could have fooled me. In fact, maybe I was fooled. Because there I was saying the Albanese government was, you know, it would keep spending much more money than it earned. And hello, we now read that next week's budget could announce our first surplus in 15 years, which, I mean, means these guys are geniuses, I suspect, although the Treasurer was playing it cool this morning.
Could we even have a one-off surplus? Is that a possibility next week?
Well, I think it's premature still because, as I said before, there's still a bit to finalise. We've got a week to go until the budget doesn't get printed,
possible, right?
Till the weekend. Oh, well, it's sort of premature because there's a couple of things still to be determined.
Oh, surplus maybe. Well, should I now apologise to this government? Joining me is the country's top finance writer, Terry McCrann of the Herald Sun. Terry, how should I start my letter to the Treasurer if he's now going to be posting a surplus? Should I start, "Dear Treasurer, you are what? You are brilliant, you are clever," or some other word?
Let me give you 3 words, Andrew. What about, "Hey, big spender"? Because you have nothing to apologise for. There is no indication at all, that this will be confirmed next Tuesday, of any attempt to rein in spending. But if we get a surplus, and let's remember, there's a difference between what the government might predict, even for this year, which has only got a couple of months to go, far less next year, and what actually arrives. We've had plenty of treasurers in the past predicting surpluses, most infamously Wayne Swan, the 4 surpluses I announced tonight. So let's keep that in mind. But there's no indication of any cuts on the spending side of the budget. Indeed, the Prime Minister said that specifically the other day. There will be no cuts in this budget. He said it out loud. It's all on the revenue side. This government has been swamped by a deluge of revenue, primarily from the resources boom. Those iron ore exports, those terrible exports of coal, those terrible exports of gas, which are going to destroy the planet, as we know, but we'll pick up the money in the meantime. We've got this huge surge in revenue, something like $250 billion in just 2 years. And that's what's going to get us, if not a surplus, close to a surplus.
And of course, these are the industries that the Greens want to shut down. Let's not forget that. Meanwhile,
Exactly.
a shock decision by the Reserve Bank today, Terry. It lifted interest rates again after a pause last month, raising for the 11th time in 12 months, this time by just 0.25%, but that's still going to hurt people. What do you make of this?
This is a really difficult decision for a lot of Australians who are already under the pump. This is a reminder that inflation remains the primary challenge in our economy.
Well, that was the Treasurer who's clearly displeased, but what do you make of it?
Well, I think there's a little bit of a sense of the Reserve Bank going rogue after that review that came down between the last decision at the beginning of April and this one, which I think treated both the Governor and the Board in particular very badly and unfairly, and basically incorrectly, basically saying all the Board did was turn up every month and just accept what the Governor proposed. You know, just ticked off on it, went to lunch, and they all lived happily ever after. So I think you saw the Reserve Bank reminding the Governor, reminding the Treasurer, that's both the Governor and the Board, that don't forget about us. We are still here to do our job, and that job is to tackle inflation. It was a surprise after the pause last month. I thought they'd pause again this month, but they've reminded us that inflation is still too high, and if necessary, while they are still there, the current Board, the current Governor, they will be increasing interest rates if they think that's what we need to attack that inflation.
Well, the problem for me is that it signals more trouble ahead, and I guess this will feed into the slowing that's predicted later in the year, the slowing in the economy. Just before we go, Terry, Alan Joyce today announced his retirement as head of Qantas, our national airline. He's going to be replaced by Vanessa Hudson as Chief Financial Officer. your judgment on what Joyce has done as head of Qantas?
Well, he's certainly been controversial, Andrew, and you might disagree with some of the decisions he's taken, not so much in running the airline, but in projecting that woke agenda. But in terms of the airline, he's had a pretty tough gig. He had the financial crisis in 2008, just after he became the CEO, and obviously COVID, which was devastating for the airline, and he's been tough in challenging the unions. But I think he's been a very good CEO, both strategically, in forming alliances and operationally. And he's going to leave big shoes to fill, and she's got some real challenges coming up as the new CEO, particularly re-equipping the airline. The fleet is getting quite old. That's the big challenge going forward.
Yes, you're quite right. It's not the operational aspects that I disagree with him on. It's all the social justice positioning that makes people like me, at least, feel unwelcome there. But there you go. Terry McCrann, thank you so much for your time.